most of the time, those post-match interviews, they don't really matter that much. They're kind of pointless, right? You get the same old platitudes. Congrats to the other team. We could have been better. We should have done this. But I would say 95% of the time, you get zero breaking news from them. And they really just almost distract you from processing the game. You get a vague feeling of the mood of whoever's being interviewed, but they're especially at the higher levels, they're so well trained. They've gone through this process so many different times that they're not going to give you anything interesting. And to be perfectly honest, the journalists aren't going to push back on it either. This isn't one of those times, obviously. That's why we're talking about this interview. But as so often happens, not only is the player or the coach that's being interviewed in this kind of automatic autopilot mode, the interviewer is too, right? I've never been the player, but I have been the interviewer. I used to work in sports media, right? And you have the same, you cook up 2 or 3 questions. The player or coach very likely doesn't want to be there unless they've just won something huge. Then maybe they want to tell you about it. But even then, most of the time they want to go celebrate, right? So you're trying to get in, get out with, 2, maybe 3 quick questions, sometimes even 1, if you get like the feeling that this really isn't going to go well. You've got it planned, and you're just going to go in, ask those questions, and leave. There isn't much room for follow-up, or there isn't much room for, I don't even want to call it like introspection or something. There just isn't room for you to expand upon what is happening. That room just doesn't exist. Well, Mikel Arteta, in a rather hilarious twist here, got himself caught up in an interviewer that was actually dialed the fuck in, like super locked in. I don't know who this girl is, all right, but this woman did a fantastic job with this interview because she actually followed up journalistically on something that was interesting that Mikel Arteta said. And you can tell in the interview that Mikel Arteta was not prepared for this. There were 2 separate instances in this interview where this interviewer didn't just go through the motions, but actually pushed back with once a fact and then second a question, right? That honestly, if you're a good journalist, you should be asking, but most people, including myself that used to do this job, probably wouldn't have thought to ask because this is such an automatic autopilot experience for so many different people. So if you live under a rock, Arsenal lost the Champions League semifinal to PSG 3-1 on aggregate. And then, if you might not know, Mikel Arteta came out after the game and basically said that, Arsenal was the better team, but PSG won because their goalkeeper was amazing, which I don't believe is true, but I've already talked about that. And this is the post-match interview that occurred, and Mikel Arteta starts out kind of with the same points, but this starts like a very normal interview, and you are going to see the moment that it becomes not a normal post-match interview. And it's kind of funny to watch.
Campaign, how tough is it to take?
Well, first of all, congratulate PSG. They are in the final. It's not about merits. It's actually about what the scoreline shows.
Sorry. It's not about merits. It's what the scoreline shows. Just drives me crazy. I think Mikel Arteta is a great coach. I don't have an issue with Mikel Arteta. I don't have an issue with Arsenal. I would have been happy for them if they went on and won the entire thing. It just comes off a bit conceited when you lose a match that I don't think you were overwhelmingly better in, but your whole post-match tour was basically that we were dominant and way better and everybody knows it, and sometimes this is just how football goes. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that if you control and dominate the match more than Arsenal did. I mean, it's just below my threshold personally, but I interrupted it.
The game is about, and this competition about the boxes, and in both games, their man of the match was the same player, their goalkeeper.
Today was Achraf Hakimi.
What? She actually hit Mikel Arteta with today the man of the match was Achraf Hakimi. Like, he got the award for man of the match, which is just a fact. But you can tell that she's weaponizing that fact to try and be like, to kind of make the same point that I was making. Like, it would be stupid if we thought that she had absolutely no agenda by saying that. You can see her face when he starts to say that, she does like a little
Final
blink.
is not about merits. It's actually about what the scoreline shows.
Look at the eyebrows go up. Look at the eyebrows go up. That was my reaction too. Be like, damn, he's really committing to it's not about merit, it's about what the scoreline shows, and then this is how the rest of that played out.
Their man of the match was the same player, their goalkeeper.
Today was Ashraf Hakimi. But
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think it was clear who won the game today for them.
He has to like reset. I mean, I'm not blaming Mikel Arteta at all for being surprised that the person doing the post-match interview is actually kind of digging in and doing a little bit of actual interviewing here, because up until that point in the interview, you're basically assuming this post-match interview is going to go the same as the other 300 you've ever done, or 500, or 1,000. But he does pivot. I'll give him credit. He does pivot pretty well and goes, yeah, well, you know who won them the match. Like, that's a pretty good pivot. And there is an argument to be made, especially in this second leg, that Gianluigi Donnarumma is the person that won them the match. He made 3 world-class saves in that match. Obviously, if he makes 1 instead of 3, we're tied. Right? So if the man of the match went to Gianluigi Donnarumma, I don't think anybody would have had a problem with it. But I think the fact that Achraf Hakimi did actually win man of the match, it's kind of catching Mikel Arteta in a lexical ambiguity. But that's not the reason that this is hilarious. Right? If that was the only thing that happened, I wouldn't be making this video. It wasn't, though. It gets so much weirder.
And I just spoke to them, and they had the same view on it. So
Who did
very
you speak
disappointed
to?
So Mikel Arteta, his initial pivot, as I pointed out, which was he was the guy that won them the match, even if he didn't win man of the match, which is a good pivot. If he just stops there, he's ahead. He handles the response from the journalist, and he makes the point that he's trying to make, which is that he believes the goalkeeper won them both matches. Right? But he feels uncomfortable that he's kind of been pushed back on that. So he reaches to try to make sure he sticks the landing. Right? He's reaching for something in particular to be like, I've got a nice firm thing to grab onto. Right? Like whatever those handles are in the bathroom. That's what he's reaching for. Because he's uncomfortable that pushback kind of just happened. If he had just taken a breath and stuck the landing, he would have been fine. But what he reaches for is...
And I just spoke to them, and they had the same view on it.
And I just spoke to them, and they had the same view on it. And now she is thinking what the rest of us are thinking, but maybe aren't going to think to ask. And this is actually very good journalistic instincts on her part, which is, oh, you spoke to somebody on PSG that said, wow, we would have been fucked if Donnarumma wasn't out there making all those saves. Who did you speak to?
Who did
very
you speak
disappointed to not to be in the final, but we have to accept that the performance is not enough. At the end, you have to have the capacity to win the game in the box.
So he just waffles on, right? He basically ignores the question. You can see him kind of hear the question and make the executive decision that he's going to continue to talk about it. He completes his answer, right, that he was initially giving. About he spoke to them, they had the same view on it. You have to have the capacity to be able to win the game in the box at this stage. We didn't win the game in the box at this stage, so we blew this advantage that we had, right? And he is hoping that with that long pause and with continuing to talk, that he is going to be able to prevent himself, potentially, at least this is my read on it, from having to answer the question of like, who did you talk to, right? He just kind of keeps going. And to be honest, a lot of journalists, not a lot, but that would have worked on some journalists, particularly ones that maybe have been instructed by the people in charge of them not to be confrontational at all. Not that this is confrontational, but, not to be engaging or necessarily asking tough questions. Because most of the time in this situation, you're asking the easy questions. You're just trying to get them started talking so that they can get the thoughts out that they want to get out there about the game. And that's the job of the post-match interview. But now all of a sudden we've got this little juicy morsel of maybe he talked to somebody on PSG. And the waffling does not work.
Who is it that you spoke to, sorry?
To a few people of them. Yeah.
Oh, no, you shared that opinion.
Yeah.
In terms
all
of
of them.
Bro. He did it again. She asks again, right? And he just goes, a few people. And then she's satisfied with that answer. She goes, oh, a few people, and they shared that opinion. Like, she knows she's kind of bagged it there. Like she's got him in the bag, she's thrown him over his shoulder, and that's, you know, and she's taking him out to dinner, sort of thing. Like she is cleaned up in this particular situation. Now, the issue is that Mikel Arteta then says all of them. He's doing the same thing that he did before. That's how he got himself in this position. Is he realizes that she is counting her win there. And obviously in journalism, it's not supposed to be a win, but basically she called his bluff because he wasn't able to name a person, or at least, you know, wasn't able to name a person publicly that he had talked to that had expressed that opinion. He just said a few people. And so she goes on to start asking the next question. And then he just says, all of them. All of them agree with me. I spoke to the entire PSG team. Everybody on PSG agreed with me. I mean, obviously, Mikel Arteta is under immense amount of stress in this situation. He is also very sad, deflated, depressed, whatever you want to call it, because they just got knocked out in the semifinal, and he clearly has his belief about how his team played. And I obviously don't necessarily fully agree with the belief about how his team played. But whatever the cause, he just doesn't handle this very well. This is just awkward. This is strange, right? Like, this is, if you're going to say that you spoke to multiple people and they share the same opinion, it might sound like an offhand comment. But to say that you've already, I mean, this is right after the match, that you've already spoken to multiple people on PSG that shared the opinion that Donnarumma won them both ties and Arsenal was dominant. This journalist is right in saying that's actually a pretty big news story. That might be the biggest thing that we're going to get out of this post-match interview and following up on that. But even then, he just doubles down and makes it worse.
And they shared that opinion.
Yeah.
In terms
All of them.
events within the game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, her face when he says all of them, I'm done.
Opinion.
Yeah.
In terms
All of them.
events
Yeah, okay, man. Sure. That's a crazy face.
within the game.
Yeah.
There was the penalty call. You didn't seem happy with that. Of course, Raya stepped up. He made the save. Saka managed to pull one back, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah. That's all in the past now.
So then she tries to pivot to the more normal post-match interview stuff, but at this point, Arteta's definitely pissed and realizes what's happening, and he just kind of goes, that's all in the past now. And that's the end of the interview. And then there's just a sigh from the people on the panel, which I think basically just sums this up. Awkward. Ugh.